The massive shadow fell across Earth's sky like a dark blanket, blocking out the sun over 3 continents. Admiral Zephyr of the Draconian Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Infernus, watching the blue marble below through tactical displays. His scaled hands gripped the command rail as hundreds of his warships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling meteors. "Primitive world," hissed Commander Vex beside him. "Their technology readings show they barely achieved spaceflight. This conquest should take mere hours." Admiral Zephyr nodded, his reptilian eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The Draconian Empire had conquered 47 worlds in the past century. Each had fallen within days, sometimes hours. The pattern never changed: overwhelming force, superior technology, and the inherent weakness of lesser species always guaranteed victory. Below them, Earth's major cities sprawled across the continents. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, all blissfully unaware that their peaceful existence was about to end. The Draconians had chosen Earth specifically because their long-range scouts reported a species that had only recently developed nuclear weapons and primitive spacecraft. Perfect for conquest and enslavement. "Signal the fleet," Admiral Zephyr commanded. "Begin atmospheric insertion. Target their military installations first, then their population centers. Standard protocol: crush their will to fight before they can organize resistance." The first wave of Draconian assault ships broke through the clouds above major military bases worldwide. Each ship was the size of a city block, bristling with plasma cannons and energy shields that could deflect any primitive weapon these humans might possess. The ship's hulls gleamed with an otherworldly metal that could withstand temperatures hot enough to melt steel. At Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado, radar operators watched in horror as their screens filled with contact signatures. General Morrison burst into the command center, his face pale as he stared at the impossible readings. "Sir, we're showing over 200 large craft descending on military installations worldwide," reported Sergeant Chen, her voice barely steady. They're huge, sir. Each one is easily 10 times larger than our biggest aircraft." General Morrison grabbed the red phone that connected directly to the Pentagon. "This is Morrison at Peterson. We have a confirmed alien invasion in progress. Repeat, confirmed alien invasion. All units to DEFCON 1. Across the globe, similar scenes played out as humanity's military forces scrambled to respond to the impossible. Fighter jets scrambled from bases that still had runways, but many installations found themselves directly under the shadow of descending alien warships. The first Draconian landing ship touched down in the Nevada desert with a thunderous impact that registered on seismographs hundreds of miles away. The massive vessel's landing legs extended, each one the size of a skyscraper, as steam and superheated air billowed from its engines. A ramp lowered with mechanical precision, revealing the interior of the ship bathed in an ominous red glow. The first Draconian soldiers to emerge stood nearly 8 feet tall, their scales shimmering between deep green and black. They wore armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal, conforming to their muscular frames while maintaining an organic appearance. Energy weapons hummed in their clawed hands, weapons that could reduce a human to ash in seconds. "Behold," Admiral Zephyr announced over the ship's communication system, his voice carrying to every soldier in the landing party. "Another world falls to the might of the Draconian Empire. These creatures call themselves humans. Show them the futility of resistance." But, as the Draconian soldiers advanced across the desert sand, something unexpected began to happen. The humans weren't running. They weren't cowering in terror as every other species had done. Instead, they were fighting back with a ferocity that caught the aliens completely off guard. At Edwards Air Force Base, test pilot Major Sarah Rodriguez climbed into an experimental aircraft that hadn't even finished its testing phase. The craft was designed for hypersonic flight, capable of speeds that pushed the boundaries of what human engineering thought possible. As Draconian ships descended over the base, she made a decision that would echo through history. "Tower, this is Ghost Rider," she radioed. "I'm taking the Aurora prototype up. I don't care if it hasn't passed safety trials." Ghost Rider, negative. "That aircraft is not cleared for combat operations." Tower, look outside. "Nothing about today is cleared for normal operations." Major Rodriguez launched the Aurora into the sky at speeds that made the sound barrier seem like a gentle suggestion. The craft's experimental engines pushed her at Mach 6 directly toward the largest Draconian ship hovering over Los Angeles. Her hands steady on the controls despite the impossible G-forces, she armed every experimental weapon the aircraft carried. Meanwhile, in laboratories around the world, human scientists were already analyzing wreckage from the first alien probes that had surveyed Earth months earlier. Dr. Elena Vasquez at MIT had been reverse engineering alien technology in secret, working with materials that shouldn't have been possible according to human understanding of physics. The electromagnetic frequency of their shields operates on a predictable pattern, she explained frantically to a room full of military officials via videoconference. If we can modulate our weapons to match the inverse frequency, we might be able to penetrate their defenses. Doctor, how long would it take to modify our weapons? Asked General Morrison. With conventional methods? Months. But I've been developing a rapid deployment modification system. We could have field-ready updates within hours if we push every manufacturing facility to maximum output. What the Draconians hadn't anticipated was humanity's greatest strength, not their technology, not their weapons, but their ability to adapt and innovate under extreme pressure. While other species had been overwhelmed by the shock of invasion, humans were already learning, already fighting back, already turning the aliens' own advantages against them. At the Nevada landing site, the first squad of Draconian soldiers encountered a group of human military personnel who should have been easy prey. Instead, they found soldiers who had spent years training for scenarios they thought were impossible. Sergeant James Murphy, a veteran of multiple tours in hostile territories, looked up at the 8-foot alien warrior approaching his position and did something the Draconian had never experienced in 47 worlds of conquest. He smiled. "Welcome to Earth," Murphy said, before detonating a trap that sent sand and shrapnel flying in all directions. The explosion itself barely scratched the aliens' armor, but it created a dust cloud that interfered with their targeting systems. In those crucial seconds of confusion, Murphy and his team struck with precision that spoke of years of training in asymmetric warfare. The Draconians had faced other species before, some with superior technology, others with greater numbers. But they had never faced a species that could adapt their tactics in real time, that could turn every disadvantage into a strategic opportunity, that could innovate solutions to impossible problems while under fire. As the first day of invasion progressed, Admiral Zephyr found himself staring at casualty reports that made no sense. His forces should have achieved complete planetary dominance within hours. Instead, they were encountering resistance that seemed to grow stronger with each engagement. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were learning from every encounter, sharing information across their global communication networks, and implementing new defensive strategies faster than his tactical computers could analyze. The primitive weapons the Draconians had dismissed were being modified in real time. The scattered military forces they had expected to overwhelm with superior firepower were coordinating globally with efficiency that rivaled the Empire's own command structure. Most unsettling of all, the humans showed no signs of the terror and despair that had broken every other species. In the command center of the Infernus, Commander Vex approached Admiral Zephyr with obvious concern. "Sir, I'm receiving reports from multiple landing sites. The humans, they're not responding as predicted." Admiral Zephyr's scaled brow furrowed as he reviewed the incoming data. In 47 previous conquests, his forces had never taken more than 15% casualties in the initial invasion phase. The current casualty rate was already approaching 40% and climbing. "What exactly are these humans doing?" he demanded. Commander Vex hesitated before responding. "They're learning, sir. Each engagement with our forces results in new tactics being deployed across their entire military network within hours. They're reverse engineering our technology from battlefield debris and implementing countermeasures faster than our scientists thought possible for a primitive species." As if to emphasize the point, alarms began blaring throughout the flagship. Major Rodriguez's experimental aircraft had just punched through the shields of 3 Draconian destroyers using a weapon system that hadn't existed 12 hours earlier. The impossible speed of human innovation was about to teach the Draconian Empire its first lesson in humility. Admiral Zephyr stared at the tactical display showing the impossible. His invasion force was not just meeting resistance, it was being systematically dismantled by a species that should have been incapable of mounting any meaningful defense. For the first time in his military career, doubt crept into his reptilian mind. The humans were proving to be unlike anything the Draconian Empire had ever encountered. And this was only the beginning. Admiral Zephyr's confidence crumbled like ancient stone as reports flooded in from across the planet. What should have been a simple mop-up operation was turning into the Empire's first military disaster in over a century. The humans weren't just resisting, they were winning. In the Australian outback, a single Draconian heavy assault mech that could level city blocks had been disabled by a group of human miners using modified industrial equipment. The miners had studied the mech's movement patterns for exactly 43 minutes before implementing a trap that used the alien's own weight against it. They had turned mining explosives and earth-moving equipment into weapons that exploited weaknesses in the alien design that the Draconians themselves hadn't known existed. How did they know to target the hydraulic joints? Commander Vex asked, watching the tactical footage with disbelief. Our own engineers didn't realize those were vulnerable points. The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Humanity's approach to warfare was unlike anything in the Draconian Empire's extensive military database. While other species had relied on established tactics and traditional strategies, humans seemed to invent entirely new forms of combat on the spot. Dr. Elena Vasquez had not slept in 36 hours, but her eyes blazed with the fire of discovery as she worked alongside teams of engineers, physicists, and computer specialists from around the globe. Through quantum-encrypted communication networks, the greatest minds of humanity were collaborating at a pace that defied conventional understanding of scientific progress. The alien power cores operate on a quantum resonance frequency, she explained to her international team via holographic conference. If we can generate an inverse frequency wave, we can cause a cascade failure in their entire power grid. Elena, that's theoretically possible, but the energy requirements would be enormous, replied Dr. Yuki Tanaka from Tokyo, where his laboratory was working under the shadow of 3 Draconian warships. That's where human ingenuity comes in, Dr. Vasquez smiled grimly. We don't need to generate enough power to affect their entire fleet. We just need to create a localized disruption that their own systems will amplify. Let their advanced technology work against them. Within 6 hours, every major power plant on Earth had been modified to generate synchronized electromagnetic pulses. The global power grid, once seen as a vulnerability, became humanity's greatest weapon. When the pulse activated simultaneously across all continents, the effect was beyond anything the Draconians had anticipated. Aboard the Infernus, Admiral Zephyr watched in horror as ship after ship reported power failures cascading through their systems. The humans had somehow turned the planet itself into a massive weapon that used the aliens' own technological superiority against them. Sir, we're losing ships across all operational theaters, Commander Vex reported, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. The humans have weaponized their entire planetary infrastructure. But the technological warfare was only one front of humanity's impossible resistance. In urban centers around the world, human civilians were proving just as adaptable as their military forces. In Tokyo, office workers had transformed skyscrapers into vertical battlefields, using elevator shafts and stairwells to create kill zones that neutralized the alien size and strength advantages. The Draconians, bred for open combat, found themselves confused and overwhelmed by 3-dimensional warfare in confined spaces. Maria Santos, a construction foreman from Sao Paulo, had organized her crew into a guerrilla force that used their knowledge of urban infrastructure to move unseen through the city. They had turned construction equipment into mobile artillery, using crane operators to drop massive concrete blocks on alien patrols with surgical precision. These creatures think in straight lines, Maria explained to her crew as they planned their next strike. They expect us to meet them head-on like warriors. Instead, we fight like builders, we know every pipe, every tunnel, every weakness in this city's structure. Her tactics were being replicated in cities across the globe as humanity's working-class citizens proved that practical knowledge and creative thinking were more valuable than advanced weaponry. Electricians were shorting out alien power systems, plumbers were using gas lines to create improvised explosives, and mechanics were modifying civilian vehicles into weapons that could penetrate alien armor using nothing more than physics and determination. The psychological impact on the Draconian forces was becoming as significant as the physical losses. These soldiers had conquered worlds where entire species would surrender after the first demonstration of superior firepower. They had never faced an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each defeat, that treated impossible odds as merely another engineering problem to be solved. Captain Thane, commanding the ground assault on London, found his forces trapped in a subway system that the humans had transformed into a maze of death. Every tunnel had been rigged with traps that used the aliens' own weight and movement against them. The humans moved through maintenance passages too small for Draconian soldiers, striking without warning and vanishing like ghosts. "These creatures fight without honor," he reported to Admiral Zephyr. "They use trickery and deception instead of meeting us in honest combat." "Honor is irrelevant if it leads to victory," Admiral Zephyr replied, though doubt was creeping into his voice. In 47 conquests, honor and superior firepower had always been enough. These humans were teaching him that there were other ways to win wars. The most disturbing reports came from the psychological evaluation teams that the Empire always deployed during conquests. Every other species had shown predictable patterns of despair, submission, and eventual acceptance of defeat. The humans showed none of these patterns. Instead, their resistance seemed to intensify with each setback. Dr. Crix, the Empire's chief xenopsychologist, presented his findings to Admiral Zephyr with obvious confusion. "Sir, I cannot explain the human response patterns. According to every model we have, their resistance should have collapsed within the first 6 hours. Instead, they appear to be treating this invasion as a learning experience." The data was undeniable. Human communication networks were buzzing with information sharing on a scale that dwarfed anything the Draconians had seen. Every successful defensive action was immediately analyzed, optimized, and distributed globally. Every failed tactic was dissected to extract useful information. The humans were treating the invasion like a massive, real-time training exercise where failure was just another source of data. Professor James Mitchell at Oxford University had organized a global network of historians, strategists, and game theorists who were analyzing Draconian tactics using every military conflict in human history as reference material. Their recommendations were being implemented by military commanders worldwide within minutes of being formulated. "The aliens fight like they've never faced serious resistance," Professor Mitchell explained in a video conference with military leaders. "Their tactics assume superiority and intimidation will carry the day. But humans have been fighting impossible odds since we learned to walk upright. David and Goliath isn't just a story for us, it's a tactical manual." The turning point came when a group of human teenagers in South Korea hacked into a Draconian communication network using nothing more than consumer electronics and programming skills they had learned for entertainment. Within hours, human intelligence services had access to real-time alien tactical communications, troop movements, and strategic planning. "They're not just primitive," Commander Vex reported with growing alarm. "They're actively learning our capabilities faster than we can adapt to their countermeasures. Sir, with respect, I recommend immediate withdrawal to reassess our approach." Admiral Zephyr's scaled fist crashed down on the command console. "The Draconian Empire does not retreat. We have 47 worlds of conquest to maintain our reputation." But, even as he spoke, Admiral Zephyr knew that this operation was unlike any in the Empire's history. The casualty reports kept climbing, the tactical situation kept deteriorating, and, most concerning of all, the humans showed no signs of slowing their adaptation rate. In underground bunkers around the world, human leaders were coordinating a response that combined military strategy, scientific innovation, and civilian resistance into something the galaxy had never seen. They weren't just fighting to survive, they were fighting to win, using methods that had never been tried because no species had ever thought to try them. President Martinez addressed the world from a secure location, her voice carrying across every communication network on the planet. "These invaders expected us to break under pressure. They expected us to surrender when faced with superior technology. They don't understand that humans don't surrender, we adapt. We innovate. We turn every disadvantage into an opportunity." Her words resonated across the globe as humanity prepared for the next phase of their impossible resistance. The Draconians had expected to conquer a primitive world. Instead, they had awakened something that would challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare, intelligence, and the power of creative thinking under pressure. The invasion was about to become something unprecedented in galactic history, the first time an inferior species had outmaneuvered a technologically superior foe through pure innovative thinking. And, the most terrifying part for Admiral Zephyr was the growing realization that the humans were just getting started. Admiral Zephyr stood before the tactical display in stunned silence, watching as his invasion force dissolved before his eyes. In the space of 72 hours, the most powerful military force in the Draconian Empire had been reduced from overwhelming superiority to desperate survival. The humans hadn't just matched their technology, they had surpassed it using methods that defied every military doctrine in the galaxy. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source, a 12-year-old girl named Amy Chen from Vancouver, Canada. While adults had been focused on matching alien technology with human engineering, Amy had approached the problem like a video game puzzle. She had noticed patterns in Draconian ship movements that reminded her of AI behaviors in strategy games, and her observations had led to a discovery that changed everything. "They're not individually controlled," Amy had explained to her father, Dr. Richard Chen, a quantum physicist working with the global resistance effort. "The ships all move in response patterns, like they're connected to a central intelligence. If you could disrupt that connection." Dr. Chen had initially dismissed his daughter's observation as childish simplification, but, as he analyzed the tactical data, he realized she was absolutely correct. The Draconian fleet operated like a vast neural network, with each ship functioning as a node in a collective intelligence system. It was more efficient than human command structures, but it had a critical vulnerability that Amy's gaming experience had identified. If you could isolate parts of the network, they would become confused and ineffective. Within hours, teams of computer scientists, neuroscientists, and signal intelligence experts were working to exploit this discovery. The solution they developed was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to destroy the alien network, they would feed it false information and let its own efficiency work against it. The operation began at exactly midnight GMT, coordinated across every time zone on Earth. Human hackers, many of them teenagers who had learned their skills in online gaming communities, launched a synchronized cyber attack that introduced false sensor data into the Draconian command network. The alien ships began receiving conflicting information about human positions, movements, and capabilities. Aboard the Infernus, Admiral Zephyr watched in growing horror as his fleet began to turn on itself. Ships reported enemy contacts in positions where other Draconian vessels were operating. Automated defense systems began targeting friendly units as the network became convinced that human ships had somehow infiltrated their formations. "Sir, our ships are firing on each other," Commander Vex reported, his voice breaking with disbelief. "The network is identifying our own vessels as enemy targets. How is this possible?" Admiral Zephyr demanded. "Our security protocols are unbreachable." The truth was that human creativity had found approaches to the problem that Draconian engineers had never considered. While the aliens had built their security around preventing direct intrusion, the humans had simply convinced the system that reality was different from what the sensors were reporting. They hadn't broken into the network, they had gaslit it into destroying itself. Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored the operation from her laboratory, watching as centuries of Draconian technological advantage crumbled under the weight of human innovation. "The beauty of it," she explained to her team, "is that we're not fighting their technology, we're making their technology fight itself. The more advanced their systems, the more thoroughly they're defeating themselves." But the cyber warfare was only one element of humanity's final gambit. Around the globe, human forces had been preparing for a coordinated offensive that would demonstrate just how thoroughly they had adapted to alien capabilities. The attack began simultaneously across all continents, using tactics that combined everything humans had learned about their enemies with innovations that had been developed in real time during the invasion. In the Nevada desert, where the first Draconian landing ship had touched down, Sergeant Murphy led an assault force that included modified civilian vehicles, repurposed industrial equipment, and weapons that had been invented in the past 72 hours. The Draconians defending the landing site found themselves facing adversaries who fought with tactics that had never been codified because they had been invented minutes before being implemented. "They adapt faster than we can analyze," Captain Thane reported from his position inside the landing ship. "Every time we adjust our defenses, they have already moved to counter our adjustments. It's as if they can predict our responses before we make them." What Captain Thane didn't understand was that humans had been predicting and countering alien responses since the invasion began. Every engagement had provided data that was instantly shared across global networks and analyzed by millions of human minds working in parallel. the collective intelligence of an entire species was being focused on the problem of defeating the Draconian invasion, and the result was tactical innovation at a pace that organic minds couldn't match. Maria Santos and her construction crew had evolved their urban guerrilla tactics into something approaching art. They moved through Sao Paulo like ghosts, using the city's infrastructure as both weapon and shield. When Draconian forces tried to flush them out with superior firepower, they found that the humans had already moved to positions that didn't exist on any map, spaces between buildings, maintenance areas, and improvised tunnels that had been created during the invasion. "We don't fight where they expect us to fight," Maria explained to her team as they prepared for their final assault on the alien command post. "We fight where they can't even imagine fighting is possible." The psychological impact on the Draconian forces was becoming as devastating as the military defeats. These soldiers had been bred and trained for conquest, raised on stories of the Empire's inevitable victory over lesser species. The concept of losing to a primitive world was beyond their ability to process. Admiral Zephyr found himself in a situation that no Draconian commander had faced in living memory: the possibility of total defeat by an inferior enemy. The casualty reports painted a picture of systematic destruction that violated every assumption about technological superiority. His forces weren't just losing, they were being dismantled by adversaries who seemed to understand Draconian capabilities better than the Draconians understood them themselves. "Sir," Commander Vex approached him with obvious reluctance. "I'm receiving reports that human forces have penetrated our ship manufacturing facilities. They're not just destroying our equipment, they're studying it and, somehow, implementing improvements in real time." The report was accurate but incomplete. Human engineers hadn't just penetrated alien manufacturing facilities, they had reverse-engineered Draconian technology and improved upon it using design principles that alien scientists had never considered. Dr. Tanaka's team in Tokyo had created power cells that were 30% more efficient than the original alien designs, using materials and techniques that were readily available on Earth. "The fascinating thing," Dr. Tanaka explained to his international colleagues, "is that their technology is incredibly advanced but also incredibly rigid. They've optimized for maximum efficiency using specific approaches, but they've never considered alternative methods that might be even more effective." Human engineering has always been about finding multiple solutions to the same problem. The final blow to Draconian morale came when human forces began using captured alien weapons that had been modified to exceed their original specifications. Draconian soldiers found themselves outgunned by their own technology in the hands of humans who had figured out how to make it work better than its designers had intended. Professor Mitchell's historical analysis had proven prophetic: humans had indeed been fighting impossible odds for their entire evolutionary history, and they had developed mental tools for survival that no other species possessed. The ability to see opportunity in disaster, to find advantage in disadvantage, and to innovate solutions under extreme pressure were uniquely human characteristics that the galaxy had never encountered before. As the fourth day of invasion began, Admiral Zephyr faced a decision that would echo through galactic history. His invasion force was effectively destroyed, his technological advantage had been neutralized, and his enemies were demonstrating capabilities that challenged everything the Empire thought it knew about warfare and intelligence. "Sir," Commander Vex said quietly, "our fleet is requesting permission to withdraw. The casualties are approaching 80%, and the humans show no signs of slowing their advance. If we remain, we risk total destruction of the invasion force." Admiral Zephyr looked at the tactical display one final time, seeing his proud fleet reduced to scattered survivors hiding from an enemy that should have been helpless prey. The impossible had occurred: the Draconian Empire had been defeated by a species that wasn't supposed to be capable of meaningful resistance. "Signal the fleet," he said finally, his voice heavy with the weight of unprecedented failure. "All ships are to withdraw to orbit immediately. We are abandoning the invasion." As Draconian ships lifted off from Earth's surface and retreated beyond the atmosphere, human forces watched in amazement at what they had accomplished. In less than 4 days, they had turned certain defeat into decisive victory using nothing but creativity, adaptability, and the stubborn human refusal to accept impossible odds. President Martinez addressed the world once again, this time from the White House lawn as alien ships fled overhead like defeated shadows. "Today, humanity has proven that intelligence and determination can overcome any advantage. These invaders came here expecting to find primitive savages. Instead, they found humans, and now they understand what that truly means. The Draconian fleet vanished into the depths of space, carrying with them a message that would reshape galactic civilization forever. Humanity was not a primitive species to be conquered, they were something entirely new, a force of innovation and adaptation that could challenge any established order. Admiral Zephyr's final report to the Draconian High Command would be studied by xenologists for centuries. The humans cannot be conquered by conventional means. They possess an ability to adapt and innovate that exceeds our models for possible intelligence. Recommend immediate diplomatic contact to establish peaceful relations. Further military action inadvisable. The invasion fleet had vanished, but they left behind something more valuable than conquest, the knowledge that in the vast galaxy filled with ancient civilizations and established powers, humanity represented something unprecedented. They were the species that exceeded every expectation, and their emergence would mark the beginning of a new age in galactic history. Earth remained unconquered, defended not by superior technology or overwhelming firepower, but by the most human of all characteristics, the ability to look at an impossible situation and find a way to make it possible. The Draconian Empire had learned that some species were better left as allies rather than adversaries, and that lesson would echo throughout the galaxy for generations to come.